and this is where there's this tension we have for us. Are we a movement or an industry? And I get that it gets a lot of clicks, and I've pointed out his obvious dementia too. And I don't say this, we were one of the first people to talk about this on our show last year. And I don't say this to be mean. Mm-hmm. It's clear that he is mentally incapacitated in some way. I feel
bad because I watched my grandfather go through this.
I do too. I watched my wife's grandfather go through this.
And it's so...
And he was a brilliant man, a surgeon. And I feel like I don't want to have to attack him on this level. On the other hand, a major political party has put up somebody who is clearly just a front operation for whatever they want to do behind the scenes, because he's not going to be the one making the decisions.
They even say it's the Harris administration.
And it's only the future of my own children at stake. And so I want to be merciful to his plight. On the other hand, you're throwing his plight down my throat in order to justify whatever you want to do to my kids and their future. And so I feel like I have to attack it at the exact same time. And so I feel as if now that our entire conservative media has glommed on to the Biden dementia thing in the last few months, we have reduced his expectations to ash. If he shows up and is a mouth breather and doesn't scream for the Metamucil in the first 15 minutes, done. Biden win.
Right.
And I think this is where there's this tension, and we saw this a lot in 2016 between click-servative media and the conservative movement. And it's just not, as someone that's been on a presidential debate team, has been in the spin room after a presidential debate on behalf of a candidate, all of this really is about managing expectations. There's two goals you have in a presidential debate. One is to successfully manage expectations before and after, and then two is to create the right kind of viral moment as opposed to the wrong kind of one. Because something's going viral at the end, and you don't want to be on the wrong end of the gun, right? And I just feel like we've already lost objective number one. I mean, the debate's only 90 minutes and not 2 hours. We have a notoriously cantankerous moderator in Chris Wallace, who the questions will all be 7 minutes long. So that's far less time Biden has to talk. And we have reduced his mental capacity to, if they inject him with Keith Richards-like drugs for the night and he survives, it feels like, hey, we lost the election tonight.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, the constant tension we have between what draws us clicks on our websites, and then what actually wins elections and advances public policy. I feel like what draws us clicks kind of won this battle.
I think that there are people that are looking at Joe Biden, I think on the other side, both sides, and they see it. And I don't, there would be a lot more viral videos of him having those senior moments. He doesn't have them every day.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So the chances are he's not going to have one of those tonight. But there are a lot of people, and this is why I think that it's dangerous for Donald Trump if he performs really well. I mean, if Biden performs really well, because there are a lot of people that are not paying attention to the news. They are worried about, he's kind of old and the things are on fire, but they really still believe that he's a moderate and that he's the old Joe Biden. If he shows up as the old Joe Biden and sounds like a moderate, and Donald Trump doesn't dismantle that, you could see a very big spike in the polls for Joe Biden.
Something that is universally true about elections. And I think one of the great misnomers is that Donald Trump has uprooted the way that elections and things are decided, and he is not. The cake is all still baked the same. We're talking about all the same demographic groups we always talk about. We're talking about the same states we always talk about. The cake is still baked the same. It's just the frosting is zanier. Okay, the frosting on top is zanier.
It's unicorn frosting.
Yes, but the cake is still baked the same. And so along those lines, when elections are about issues, Republicans win. When elections are about personalities, Democrats win. Donald Trump won the last election for two reasons. Jim Comey delivered a letter to Congress the week before the election saying, let's code Columbo. I got one more question on Hillary's emails. After Trump had performed poorly in the debates, the one debate he did do well, it was the debate after the NBC tape came out, so it almost didn't count. All right, the election looked like it was over. Comey hit pause on the election. The other reason he won the debate is the number one issue that drove him in his electorate, judicial nominations. If you look at that was the number 2 overall most popular issue in the election. Of those that made that their number one issue, Trump won those voters by 15 points. okay? Meaning that when he looked in the camera in front of 90 million people 4 years ago and said, I'm going to appoint justices like Amy Coney Barrett that will vote to overturn Roe, that was the issue that gave people that really were squeamish about voting for such a character the rationale, the justification, the conviction, whatever word you want to use, to say, okay, I know he's going to do that better than Hillary Clinton, so I'm in. But he needs to make it about issues tonight and not Joe Biden's dementia.
So if he does make it about his dementia, it'll be bad.
I agree.
I agree, and I think the message he needs to send is not just about the Supreme Court. He needs to say, my record speaks for itself. I kept my promises, and I promise this to you. Your country, your city, your neighborhood will be safe.
Agreed.
Under my administration. Yep. Our economy will come back under my administration. And this nonsense with this Marxist stuff will end with my administration. If he says those three things, that's where I think people live. The economy, safety, and the future. You know?
I don't disagree. And he had a very compelling case for re-election prior to March 12th. And then he made one of the worst decisions I think that's ever been made in the history of human management, handing the country over to Anthony Fauci and Debbie Birx for 4 months. And by ceding that ground, and if you look at, I can tell you for a fact, because I've had sources tell me this, the irony is he handed the country over to Fauci and Birx for 4 months, and let's bedazzle our face shields and shut everything down and all the craziness that we heard from those two. And yet their internal polling at the Trump campaign tells them that the number one weakness they have, and that's why they're weak in places like Arizona, is seniors believe that they left them to die and weren't serious about the virus. Okay. And he won that group, I think, by about 9 points in 2016. And that's the big group that they have seen a decline with on the COVID issue.
How many points?
I've heard it's bad. And if you look at all the internal polling of the public polls, they show that issue as well. And that's a difficult needle for him to thread, because outside of seniors, literally everyone else that would vote for Trump wants their kids back in school, wants their lives back. Suburban women who were all Karen 6 months ago are now like, I don't want to watch my kids for 9 more months, put them back in school. And so that he's got to thread a needle there where he needs to show that on one hand, I took this seriously. On the other hand, if he can't champion lockdowns, because that turns off a lot of other potential Trump voters that want America to look like Ron DeSantis' Florida right now.
I'm curious because you're talking about threading this needle, and it's an interesting one. He has a difficult job here, I think, to be reelected at all. It's not an easy road. You mentioned something where it's one of the worst decisions we've seen in human history of human management, and I hear that all the time from Republicans and Trump supporters who say the coronavirus thing was terrible, the way it was handled. How do you vote for him if he committed one of the worst? How does Trump convince people, vote for me even though you hate that I shut down the country for 6 weeks?
This is why he has to make it about election or about issues and not personalities. Is he needs to make, and this is where we can actually tie the dementia into the issues. I had an interesting conversation with my mom a couple weeks ago, and she's kind of my one-person moderate swing Democrat voter focus group. Okay, had me at 15, pro-life, but thinks government should do things for people that they can't do for themselves. Hates Republicans because they think they're all a bunch of corporate prostitutes who hate single moms like her.
You've been quite a disappointment to her, haven't you?
But we have fascinating conversations because we're really close, so we're very honest with each other. And we had the conversation a couple weeks ago where she said, something's wrong with Joe Biden, and I wonder, because she hates the racialist stuff. She hates that stuff. You got to remember, she's a single mom, worked herself up from nothing, went to college, raised a family, and to hear all this victimology and all this stuff, she doesn't buy into any of that. And so the riots and everything else, she was really mad that Trump didn't call out like literally the Marines and like crush all of these people. And she said to me the other day, we were talking about this, and she said, I wonder many times if I'm going to vote for Biden, who's actually president during the day and making the decisions, because it's not him. And I wonder if it's the people behind some of these groups that are doing these riots and things in the streets. And I think that's where you can tie those messages together and force Joe Biden to show that he is strong enough to say, no, we're not going to ban fracking. No, we're not going to toast a glass to Antifa.
How is he going to be able to do that? When you look at what he has to say he's against defunding the police. he has to say he's against
So
all
we're talking Joe Biden is the he this time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
He's against the riots that were going on. He is not going to pack the Supreme Court. You know, he has to walk back almost everything he said. How he's going to do that and remain credible and not have Donald Trump go, wait, but you said. Even Chris Wallace might follow up a question. Follow up a question.
Yeah, I mean, I give him better odds than Martha Raddatz.
Yeah.
I think if both sides do what they're supposed to do in the debate tonight, Donald Trump successfully made the case that America was a pretty good place until March 12th, 2020, that he had done a pretty good job, that, you know, we had seen the largest median income of family households growth in this country since 1968, well before I was born. All right. So he wants to make the case that of where he took us until March 12th, and we're already getting back there. Look at the jobs report. The end of the month, we're expecting one major investment house is forecasting a 32% increase in GDP. If he does his job, he's going to make the case. We called timeout on March 12th for an extraordinary circumstance that no president's ever faced. We had to figure it out on the run. And now we're figuring out we're back on track and the kids are going back to school and you're watching Big Ten football and all this kind of stuff. He wants to make a return to normalcy case. Joe Biden probably wants the entire debate to be about COVID-19, because if it's about any other issue, any other reason that you would view Joe Biden as, okay, he's a safe Democrat. I don't like what Trump tweets. I don't like the way he behaves. I don't think Biden's a communist, so he's a soft landing for me. He's taken all of those issues off the table. And so he wants to make the entire thing about COVID. And I think Trump wants to make the entire thing about anything but COVID if they both are successful tonight in doing what they want to do.